Welcome everyone to the weekly Tech Hangout. We do this every Thursday evening, and this is a very casual kind of format. So I have a few topics here that we're going to be talking about, but the best part about this is that we've got live chat during the live stream. So for anyone who is able to make it here, I encourage you to, because the chat is where it's at, really. I wanted to start this off talking about that. The Terrafugia Transition, I hope I'm saying the name right, Transition flying car is set to go on sale next year. So this is really, we mean it this time, going to be a real thing for an airplane that you can drive on the freeway also. And you can go get a pilot's license and buy one of your own, probably for quite a bit more than most of us are going to be able to pay. Corning has announced this week that Gorilla Glass 6 has been developed. So we're going to have one step closer to, I don't know, glass that's more durable than the previous generation. I guess it's the best way to put it. Samsung set to fold the launchable phone. How about Samsung is set to launch the foldable phone also in 2019? You can use iOS 12 to battle data caps. I actually like this one. I'm really happy about this because you should be able to tell your phone not to waste your precious data on things that it doesn't need to. You know, you can restrict them to Wi-Fi only, which is awesome. Will Huawei outsell Apple next year? We know that they won't in the US, but worldwide it looks like they could possibly sell more handsets than Apple does. It'll probably be a close call on that one. And finally, how to get someone to put down the phone and listen when you're talking to them. I think a few of us would appreciate that. All right, guys, let's talk tech. What's going on, people? We got Carl Letourneau, Greg M., Joshua Fitzpatrick, Playlist Gaza. I haven't seen a couple of you guys for a while, at least not in the chat. I see someone in the UK has a rocket suit you can buy. The only thing is flight time is just over 3 minutes and max altitude is over 3,000 meters. You know, I think I saw that one too, and that's always my question is if you have like a rocket powered suit of some sort, obviously you need a fuel cell or a fuel source for that. So how much can you really fit into something that's only designed to carry a person? You got to imagine the thing just kind of keeps getting bigger and bigger. And then way back, if you remember, the military was trying to develop a propeller powered one-man kind of thing, which was nuts because instead of putting the propeller above the pilot, it was actually below you, and there wasn't even a grill over it or anything. So if you came off that platform, basically you fell into the propeller. Obviously, that one didn't get too far either. And I think that the stability and being able to master these things is one of the other prohibitive steps. However, with software and gyroscopes and things like drone technology, we're kind of overcoming a lot of those problems. But it still looks like if you want to make something small enough for one person, you're going to be challenged by how you can power that thing. I'm going to switch over here and actually I'm going to hold on a second and get to that in a second. I love Apple's transparency. The biggest challenge will be the learning curve. Right. I know a lot of drop kicks. that are behind the wheel. All the people I know that fly are super switched on. Yeah, this would certainly be something that, if you're going to pilot this specific vehicle, let's go ahead and open up this browser here. If you don't remember this thing, the first time we saw it was like back in 2009, and this is right around the corner in 2010. We're going to launch. All you have to do is you take basically like this 16-hour training course, and you are certified to fly, which is nuts. Like you wouldn't actually need a pilot's license. You would only have to be trained on how to operate this specific aircraft. Look, I can't even talk, and I'm off the allergy medication too. That's a crazy thing. And the way this thing works is that the wings on it would actually just fold up to the side, so it looked kind of ridiculous going down the freeway, and you would obviously have to be careful and watch for your clearance on the top. But it was less of a flying car and more of an airplane that could be driven, a small airplane that could be driven on the road. It was street legal, and they were in the development stages at that time. I think they had a couple different prototypes that just never really made it to market for whatever reason. And like they're saying here in the article, it was unveiled almost a decade ago, but it never actually came to market. And now they're saying that this thing will be available 2019. And some of the previous models, this is what we know so far, is that they had quoted an airborne range of 400 miles and a top speed of 100 miles per hour. I can't convert that for you, so if you're on the metric system, it's probably, what is 100 miles an hour, like 160 kilometers, something like that. In any case, 400-mile range, it's pretty decent for most people. And then I suppose you could refuel, and you could probably pull this thing into a gas station if you had enough clearance on the top. And they do state here that rather than a car with wings, Terrafugia thinks of the transition as a street-legal airplane. It's designed to take advantage of the network of small airports scattered across the United States. So you would just fly from one airport to the next, and then you could turn your airplane into a car, drive around town, and when you got ready to take off, you would go back to the airport, I would assume. So this isn't like you're just going to take off on some stretch of road or freeway or anything like that. You're going to have to be in an airport in order to fly this thing. So, calling this as a flying car is a bit of a stretch. Now, as to why they think that maybe this is actually going to happen now is that the company was purchased last year by a Chinese automaker called Geely, which is also the parent company of Volvo. So they may have come into some funding or some advertising or some technology or who knows what, maybe some resources that they didn't have available before. So it really looks like this, is going to happen. And, looking at, of all the technology that we usually discuss here, it's more along the lines of what phones and tablets and computers can do. And I really like to get into the autonomous vehicle and stuff like this, flying cars, because little by little, we're starting to see more drones in the air. We're starting to see different types of aircraft. And now, if you add to this flying cars, and we know that Uber has ambitions to make a fleet of flying cars that would pick you up and drop you off wherever. So it's really starting to look like it won't be that much longer until these things become a reality. And obviously, there will be lots of laws and safety concerns and who knows what else that will go along with this new technology, if it becomes available. Obviously, if this thing really does have like a $200,000 price tag, as the earlier models were said to have been, it's not going to be all that commonplace. But you can think of, there will be some people out there that say, hey, I'd rather just drive to the airport, take off, not deal with anything else. And we all know like what a nightmare headaches are, what a nightmare airports are these days. I can't talk regardless. I guess I can't blame it on the allergy meds. So being able to fly and drive your own vehicle would be kind of cool, but there's a lot of other things that come into question as to who is going to be the let's call it air traffic control for these things. Because if you're flying them yourself and you are at a much lower altitude, obviously, than most aircraft will be, you've got to be able to navigate a route that's not going to cause you to collide with someone else who's doing the same thing. So I'm wondering how this is going to work. Is all that going to be automated? Are you going to have to check in before you take off and land just like you would a normal airplane? I don't have the answers to all these questions, but certainly things that we have to think about. We also know that one of Google's founders, Larry Page, is a huge fan of flying aircraft concepts, and he's been investing in a few different companies and a few different prototypes, is what I've been told, for flying vehicles. So this will all be interesting to see. Let's see. I wonder how that will handle in a stiff crosswind, especially landing. That's another good question. If this thing's too light, then that's going to be a concern also, just like it would be, if you're flying something like an ultralight. Obviously, there are very specific weather conditions where you can operate those things. So yeah, lots of good questions. Don't have a lot of answers about it. I am curious. 16 hours of training. Yeah, so that was on the original version. If I remember correctly, there was like a 2-day course, 8 hours twice, where you could get a certification to fly the previous generation of this aircraft. So if it's going to be like that, yeah, that is kind of scary. To drive on Australian roads, one needs to drive on Australian roads needs 100 hours of supervised training. Really? Wow. Hey, what's up, Johnny? Good to see you here. So this is interesting. And, it reminded me of something that I've never brought up on this stream, and I thought you guys would be interested in if you haven't already seen it. There's quite a history behind attempts to create flying cars of one sort or another. And one of the interesting and probably more sad stories, if you haven't already heard about this, I'm going to put it on the screen. This is called the Flying Mizar. And this was developed way back in the 70s, between 1971 and 1973. And what they did is they came up with basically, I don't know if you've ever seen this before. Let's get some photos here. If you've ever seen the Ford Pinto, which was taken off the road for other reasons, basically because it was not a safe vehicle to drive, a couple of enterprising individuals decided that why couldn't you just park the wing for your car at the airport, back the car up into the wing, attach it, and then just use the car to taxi down the runway and then eventually take off and fly and land. And this thing actually flew. I can't show you the videos, obviously, but you can certainly check them out on YouTube. If you go and take a look for Flying Mizar, check these out. And I will warn you up front, it has a very sad ending. The car flew at least 1 or 2 trial runs, and then it had a tragic ending when the structure wasn't able to maintain the weight of the car, and the car actually came off of the wing mid-flight, and that was pretty much the end of that company. So we've had other versions of flying cars throughout history, but they never really quite made it there. And they have some that actually fly, they just haven't been practical for whatever reason to bring to market. So it is what it is. If you guys, I think if any mods, if you're having any troubles there, just go ahead and ban whoever, and they can go make another account and come back and give me more credit for interaction here. Have anyone watched James Make Great Inventions? I don't think so. We all remember the DeLorean from Back to the Future. Yeah, good call. That was a flying car, technically, right? So, yeah, this looks like something that's going to happen, and I don't know. At this point, I am quite frustrated by airlines in general, TSA, the headaches involved with getting in and out of an airport and through security and, all this stuff. But would you want to jump in a brand new, 2019 flying or drivable plane that just launched and doesn't really have much of a track record? And what are the liabilities that are going to come along with something like this? I wonder what it's going to be like to insure your flying car for just liability only, because if this thing crashes or has any sort of problems in the air, that's going to incur a considerable cost, right? Oh, geez, come on, people. What is tonight? Tonight is crazy. That's funny. Okay, hey, it was nice seeing you. I haven't had to do this like forever. That's pretty crazy. So anyways, let's get back to second thing on the list, and that is your next smartphone's display will be much tougher to crack, so they say. And I'm going to put that out with some reservations here, and here's why. Every year we hear, from the get-go, from the very beginning, we've been hearing about Gorilla Glass. And as nice of a descriptive term that is, ooh, Gorilla Glass, it sounds like it must be very durable or, very strong because gorillas have the strength of like 10 men, right? And then by the time it gets installed onto a phone, and if you work at a phone repair shop, you find out very quickly after that phone's released that Gorilla Glass or not, glass and concrete, glass and asphalt, and even glass and nightstands don't appear to go together very well. So this is obviously going to be an improvement on the current technology, Gorilla Glass 5. We are now moving to Gorilla Glass 6, and that will be another selling point for why you need to upgrade your phone so that you can have the latest, greatest Gorilla Glass on it. And I probably did that too soon. Let's do this. I knew that was going to happen. I just threw the stinger right in the middle of the stream, didn't I? Congratulations, Mike. I'm going to wait until we can kind of clear up this chat because it's a big mess here. Even the usernames are sort of offensive, if you want to call it that. Let's see. I can't. You know what? Once they're hidden, their username still stays. It still stays. Hey, if you can identify as whatever you like, man, that's no problem. But you don't really need to share that with everyone else. So anyways. And that is supposedly a derogatory term, so you probably shouldn't throw that around, but, it is what it is. So, in any case, Gorilla Glass 6 has been announced by Corning, and for some reason... Oh, there we go. Now, listen to this. This is the caveat, one of them, I think. There's always two fundamental components for Gorilla Glass. One is the actual glass composition at the atomic level, which elements are in the glass itself. Okay, let me try to read this again. This is actually Corning, I believe one of the Corning representatives, talking about what this is and how they develop it and what it does. So one is the actual glass composition at the atomic level, which elements are in the glass itself. That was phrased oddly. And what we do is combine it with an ion exchange process, basically a strengthening process, says Forrester. The glass gets dipped into a molten bath of salts where sodium ions leave while larger potassium ions enter. You're jamming them into the glass, however that works. And what that does is create this compressive stress at the surface. This obviously is intended to make the glass more resilient, more rigid, more hard basically, and scratch resistant. Now, here's the thing. When you scroll down here a little bit, here is the caution on Corning's claims. And this is important. And I think it's something that most people don't really consider when they hear about this great new technology that's coming out. A caution on Corning's claims. The glass's actual real-world performance will differ from what happens into the lab. They're saying that this thing can be dropped from 1 meter like 15 times on the average before it ends up cracking or breaking completely. The Morrow notes. Oh, Morrow is the name of the guy. Notes that manufacturers can request a thinner version or a specific shape that might reduce some of its resilience. And this is the real problem here. When people talk about Gorilla Glass, no matter how impressively it will perform in the laboratory, the fact of the matter is they don't manufacture phones. They don't put these things into an iPhone or a Galaxy phone or any other phone and then drop test them. They're talking about testing the glass itself under laboratory conditions. And of course, the first thing that manufacturers do when they see this new technology is say, it's too thick, it's too heavy, you got to make it smaller, it has to be curved, you've got to round the edges. So you start making all of these changes to something that performs a certain way in the laboratory. And what you end up with is a manufacturer who does not make false claims. Everything that Corning is saying about this Gorilla Glass technology is most likely accurate. But by the time it gets installed into a phone or a tablet or anything else, chances are you're not going to get that same performance. And that's why I believe when we have customers come in and say, you know, this is supposed to be Gorilla Glass and I dropped it one time and the whole phone just shattered. Well, you know, maybe or maybe not the first time that it was dropped, but chances are that by the time that glass got installed onto your phone, it's much thinner and much less durable than it was, shown to be in the laboratory. So that's the main problem. You know, if you think about it, we know that there is such a thing as bulletproof glass. You can make a piece of glass that will deflect a high-powered a bullet from a high-powered rifle, right? Why don't you just put that on a phone? Why don't we just put that on the windshield of our car? Because it's too thick and it's too heavy, and there's no way anyone is going to do that. So I suspect the same thing is true with Gorilla Glass 6. When you buy this thing, it's going to be much different, far away from the potential durability factor that it could have had, and people will buy the sales hype and then be very disappointed by the performance afterward. Now, that being said, we would expect it to be an improvement overall versus Gorilla Glass 5 under similar conditions. If the phone design is the same, then we would think that it's going to perform the same way. Now, when we start putting notches into OLED screens and we start wrapping the edge of the glass around the side of the phone, who knows how that's going to actually affect the performance, but I would think it would more than likely be a detriment to the durability and the scratch resistance of this particular material. So, Corning has also developed an inkjet process called Vibrant Gorilla Glass that allows manufacturers to etch any color or design onto the glass itself, creating a custom look without necessitating a case, which sounds kind of cool, especially for branding. If you want to, instead of having something stamped onto a piece of glass, actually have it etched in, possibly even from the front side. But that would also lead me to wonder as to, once you start etching anything into a smooth surface, if you're not compromising the structural integrity of that glass or whatever it is that you happen to be working with, it seems like you would have a weaker point once something is etched into the glass. Maybe this is different. You can expect to see Gorilla Glass 6 devices within the next 6 months. And obviously, if Apple or Samsung adopts Gorilla Glass 6, which we would assume that they will, then obviously other manufacturers will follow probably almost immediately. Right now, according to this article, there are over 6 billion consumer devices worldwide right now that have Gorilla Glass installed on them. So if you didn't buy Corning stock a long time ago, you probably wish that you had. I certainly do. All right, let's go over here to the comments now and see what's going on. I think I missed a few here. Moto Shatter Shield is stronger. I believe you. Motorola has been doing amazing things with screens for a long time. It's unfortunate that they haven't been able to grab more market share and do a couple other things right that could really make them a serious competitor. I don't know why they haven't. Why don't they make screens from old recycled Coke bottles? They're very tough to destroy. Again, Johnny, I think that the problem is with the thickness of the glass. And yeah, but that's a good idea. They should have at least recycled the old Coke bottles and make them into phone screens. Gorilla Glass is just a glorified temperate glass. I believe you on that one. Lab tests on all of them, actually. Lab testing is always different from real life tests. That is the real problem, right? And this is what's sad, is that we see all sorts of, every company is guilty of saying, we've got, this speed on our connection and our car gets this many miles per gallon, and then it's always up to this amount, and your mileage may vary, obviously, right? So we try to make sure to throw that in whenever I sell something, especially when we're talking about tempered glass or anything else like that. You see a ridiculous advertisement where somebody's banging the screen of a phone with a hammer, and yeah, try that in real life. I bet we could shatter any tempered glass that's installed on a phone, and why they persist in this advertising, I don't get. Lab testing is, what about graphene mesh reinforced screens? That's a good question. Why hasn't graphene taken over the world yet? I don't know the answer to that, but I've been hearing a lot about it lately. They should do the nightstand tests. Those things are screen killers, indeed. That is so true. Let's see. I think I woke up and it was like, this damage is even worse. Yeah, that is just a regular thing, and I can't figure out how we can overcome that one. All right, let's move. It's 10 minutes, and we are looking at Samsung's most innovative phone ever. And you know what just makes me laugh every time I hear about the most anything? So this year's flagship is going to be the most X. It's going to be the most innovative. It's going to be the fastest. It's going to be, any number of different categories that you can think of. This time, it's going to be better than before, than any other model. Well, shouldn't it be? If you are selling your most recent flagship or your most recent new and improved product, shouldn't it be better than all of its predecessors? And obviously that's not always true, but if you're using that as a selling point, I would certainly hope so. That should really be a given. This year's model should be the best one so far. If it's not, you're actually working backwards. So I always laugh when I read these titles. Let's see. This is the one I think that wouldn't let me highlight, so I'm going to have to dig through this manually. I don't want to read the entire article, but there are a few things on here like this. The code name for the new Galaxy foldable smartphone, which we thought was going to be the Galaxy X, is said to be codenamed Winner. So I don't know if Charlie Sheen had something to do with choosing this name or what, but it is going to feature a 7-inch display that can fold in half like a wallet. Once it's folded, it will display information via a small display bar, which obviously, why else would you fold the thing in half? I guess in order to fit it into your pocket or into a smaller space, but it makes sense that you wouldn't have to open it up every single time you want to see something. Remember when the first flip phone was launched that had your missed calls and the time of day displayed on the outside of the phone, and so you didn't have to open it up to take a look and see who called you or what time it was? That was brilliant. So that's something I think that we would have assumed a folding phone would have, either an outer display or maybe a partially exposed display, and that's what they've been talking about on this one, is that instead of folding exactly in half, that you would have an overlap, and part of that overlap would be visible while the phone was closed. And initially I was kind of thinking that, if the phone is folded in half, that would almost be, that would be ideal for protecting the display, right? So you always have the display on the inside of the phone. That way you don't have to worry about having glass or whatever other materials, AMOLED, which is particularly sensitive to pressure in my experience. Instead of having that on the outside, when the phone's not in use, you could have it on the inside. But obviously there would have to be either an outer display or part of the display kind of overlapping the inside. So that's going to be exposed, but at least it would minimize the amount of surface area that's going to be in danger if that thing drops at any point. Unlike previous foldable smartphones, which use two screens, Samsung's device will use a single display that can fold. Didn't I just say that? Okay, I must have read through this article too much. They are not expecting, according to Techno Buffalo, Samsung is not expecting the device to be a major commercial hit, at least at first, and that would not be a surprise. I wouldn't think. How many people are excited about a folding phone? I don't know the answer to that question, but I do know this. They're talking about this thing costing up to $1,500. So, if you think people had a hard time swallowing $1,000 phone price point, if we're going to go up to $1,500, possibly even higher than that, obviously your potential customer base is going to be a lot smaller than most other companies will be. So probably the thinking being that if this thing works the way that they plan it to, and they get it out there and people are trying it and see what they like about it and what designs need to be changed, or whether it's a complete failure, before they invest into manufacturing a large number of probably different handsets to push as their flagship or as one of their premium phones. I suspect it'll be a very limited edition release, but in fact, I'd be surprised if it wasn't, because if you can imagine the amount of money they must be investing into the displays themselves, among other things. Let's see. I always buy the best until I look at what my neighbors bought and go, oh, right, yeah, exactly. That's kind of like the way it goes, right? I'm going to see if I can get through this, because this one at the end I think you're really going to enjoy. There is a new, let me back up here. Folding phones will bring hinge issues and wires contact issues, killing communication between the two parts. Yeah, I was wondering about that myself, Carl. One of the things that when we had flip phones and other types of phones that folded, basically, obviously, the wear and tear is always on that hinge, right? So I don't know how they're going to address that. I did read something about how Motorola is planning to, see if I can get this whole thing on the screen. Motorola is planning to build in some sort of heating element, supposedly, in the center of their foldable screen. In fact, they got a patent for it. I'm not sure they'll ever really even release the phone, but they were saying that what they would do is heat that center area where the screen folds in half, and that was to prevent wear and tear on the display itself. But like you said, we've got things communicating between those two different halves as it gets folded in half. How are they going to make that thing last? Because obviously people use their phones so frequently that they're going to be opening and shutting that thing all day long. So yeah, I suspect the same thing. They're probably going to find out that in the real world, over several months' time, there will probably be some unforeseen issues. And I wonder how they're going to go about handling the warranty on these phones. At $1,500 or so, that's going to be something that people aren't going to want to deal with when they end up damaging the thing, or it fails, or whatever else happens. So I'd say if you're going to be one of the cutting edge to adopt this new folding Samsung technology at $1,500, get some sort of protection plan for that. See if your homeowners or any of your insurances don't cover that phone, and if they don't, see what kind of options you have. I want to say, no, I don't want to endorse anyone, but there are some that are better than others out there, so shop around for sure. Some of the protection plans that are sold by phone carriers, allergies coming back, some of the protection plans that are really pushed at the point of sale from phone carriers, if you read the fine print, they're not really what you would expect. And in fact, over the last 10 years or so, a lot of these companies have gotten wise, and they've realized that you can't sell insurance for $10 a month with zero deductible to someone who's buying a Galaxy Note 8 or something, Galaxy Note 9 or whatever, or, an iPhone 10, obviously. So read the fine print, see what the deductible is, do the math, and then weigh that against your chances of damaging the thing. And a lot of times you find out that you're not really that far behind if you just, take care of your stuff. And then if and when it does fail, hopefully it's further down the line, 6 months to a year later, when those parts are affordable to replace. That's what we often find happening. Today, Android Authority released a video mentioning that the Moto Razr 3 was the number 8 best-selling phone from all times. Wow, that's impressive and not hard to believe. That phone, everyone had that phone, and man, I got to tell you, I hated working on that stupid hinge. I stabbed myself in the hand more than once getting those little knuckles out of the side. Those were such a nightmare. But those flex cables did wear out all the time, and what you said. Who was it? Was it Carl? Another thing to add to what you said is that when they test these things out, that's one thing. And when they design them, obviously they're thinking about how the physical movement is going to be. But the other question is, how is heat going to affect these things overall? And that's one of the things that we saw degrade flexible cables over time, was that the phones got warm, they got left in the car, they go from warm to cold and warm to cold, and eventually those cables became very brittle. So I wonder, what kind of connection they're going to have in that hinged area that goes from one side to the other that is going to be resilient enough not only to last through the wear and tear, but also to be able to handle the heat that's coming from the phone on a moving part. That's one of the things that we see making a big, causing big problems for stuff like that. Oh, Apple will deny. Oh, yeah, if you're Apple, you just say, no, I shouldn't say that. A lot of manufacturers, I think, would probably say, yeah, there's no problem. You just think there's a problem. Unfortunately, Apple lately has been proving that they are certainly among the companies that do that kind of stuff. New iOS trick helps you battle data caps. I like this, and I want to share this with you because, one, at this point, I turn my cellular data off for different reasons, and here's why. And I have a package at the door right now, so I really hate to do this, friends, but I have got to go and probably sign for something. So if you will keep everyone entertained for a moment, I will be right back. Can I put where's my be right back thing? Anyways, if anyone says where'd the dude go, tell him I'll be back in like less than a minute. All right, where were we? We will never know what trick battles data caps. Okay, so here is what they're saying in this article, which I think that you will find useful, and that is iOS 12 is going to give you an option, and I had it highlighted here, and for some reason it's gone. But you'll be able to go into your settings and see how much mobile data each of your applications is using, and then you can go in and tweak them and tell them not to use cellular data anymore. And I swear it's here somewhere. Let's see. So you're going to go to the Settings app after you've updated to iOS 12 beta and select Cellular. Scroll down to the cellular data section and you can see how you've been going through your data allowance. And this is important, obviously, if you have a limited amount of data on your plan. On the same screen, you can prevent apps from using the data, thus restricting them to Wi-Fi. Just use the toggle next to each app. And another thing that they said is that, and this part I don't love as much. So according to the article, because I have not installed iOS 12 beta, I am not going to install iOS 12 at all until we know what kind of bugs it comes with. They figure out how to fix them, release a patch, and then we're good to go. So for the cutting edge people, you should know this. For me, I'm gonna wait until it's working and I don't have to worry about having any problems with my phone. But you can go in and say, hey, this app has been using my mobile data, even though why would it, which they tend to do that for whatever reasons, and you can just toggle it off and tell it only to connect while you're on Wi-Fi, which I think is great. Now, what I don't love about this is that they said they're also going to arrange your applications according to the amount of data that they use. So instead of being alphabetical, when you want to go into your app settings, you're going to have to scroll through based on how often they're used rather than being able to look them up alphabetically. And I really wish that that would be an option. You can set one or the other or maybe switch back and forth, and that will probably be something that's released in a later version. But it is nice that they're going to let you go in and tell any app that's using up a lot of your cellular data that, hey, you cannot connect to the network, wait till we're on Wi-Fi, and then do your thing. Now, my trick is this, and I already said it, and I did this for a different reason. My phone was using a ridiculous amount of cellular data because something went goofy with the router in my home. So I thought that I was on Wi-Fi for about 4 days, and next thing you know, I'm getting notices saying that you're almost out of data. And the reason I was almost out of data was because for whatever reason, my phone disconnected from the Wi-Fi and never reconnected itself. And I wasn't paying attention. I never looked to see that I was on Wi-Fi or not. I just assumed I'm at home. I'm less than 50 feet from the router. Of course I'm on Wi-Fi. But what we have learned over time is that iPhones, they tend to be somewhat picky on occasion when it comes to routers. I remember at one point we had a Belkin router. No, I'm sorry, it wasn't a Belkin, it was a D-Link. We had a D-Link router that you could not connect to with your iPhone, no matter what. I don't know what it worked with any other phone, but specifically iPhones would not connect to this router. And I've noticed that, some work better than others. And unfortunately, it looks like the one that I got from my ISP does not always like my iPhone. And for that reason, I've turned my cellular data off when I leave the house. If I need to connect to a navigation app or something like that, I turn it on, and when it's finished, when I reach my destination or I don't need it anymore, I turn the cellular data back off, because I don't want to get back home, forget about it, think that I'm on Wi-Fi, and then burn through all my data in a couple days, which I did because I was watching YouTube videos and all sorts of other stuff. So it is good. It is good to know, which app is using what and why, and be able to shut that on and off. Let's see, what's this about unboxing here? What did you buy? New tools, new toys, always fun to receive a package. Oh, you really want to know? Probably not nearly as exciting as you think, but let me go. Tell you what, we want unboxing? Okay, you want unboxing? I have to go grab the packages. I honestly don't know if there's anything in there that's really exciting, but sure, why not? Actually, guys, let me wrap this up because I've only got 2 more things. Or let me do one more thing, then we'll see if we can unbox, and I want to save the last article for the end. How's that? Fair? What's up, Site Gamers? So, shut your data off or tell applications not to use it without your permission. I think that's brilliant. That's a good move, Apple. Huawei is on track to steal iPhone's crown in 2019. Really? Really? Well, here's the thing. Huawei says it's on track to ship 200 million phones by the end of 2018. I doubt that many, if any, of those phones are coming for the US. So obviously, we tend to say, oh, Apple's doing this, Samsung's doing this, Huawei's doing this. But for people who live wherever it is that you are, I think that you typically think of the market that you happen to be located in. So for us in America, we think, well, this is what we see of the world, right? Apple has the biggest market share, Samsung's number 2, and everybody else falls far behind that. And in fact, we even have government officials telling us that we shouldn't be using Chinese phones, specifically Huawei and ZTE, right? Well, despite that, worldwide, Huawei has a huge amount of the market share, and they are saying they're going to sell 200 million phones by the end of 2018 and possibly surpass Apple next year when in total handset units. Now, obviously, the dollar amounts are going to be different. Huawei is not selling probably as many premium handsets as Apple does. I'm just kind of guessing here because we don't really have the hard data from Apple. They don't tell us exactly how many of each phone that they sell, but we can assume that there are quite a few people buying iPhones that are, at least $700 price tag to start with, right? In 2017, Apple sold a whopping 215 million iPhone units. And Huawei is set to release its next flagship Mate series smartphone in the 3rd quarter this year. The Chinese company had more smartphone shipments than Apple in June and July of 2017. But when Apple released the iPhone X, which obviously every year they're going to have something in September that comes out, and that pushed them back over onto, to surpass Huawei. So Huawei was ahead of Apple during 2017. Until the iPhone X hit. And we would also assume that anytime a company like Apple is saying, hey, our new launch is right around the corner, they're probably going to see a huge slowdown, right? I would expect that July, August, not big months for iPhone sales because everyone wants to see, even if they're not planning on buying it, they're going to want to know what's available in September. Am I making a big mistake by buying this right now when there's something brand new coming out next month or the month after? And we'll even see that salespeople tend to handle it the same way. Whether they intend to or not, and whether it's good for them, they usually will say, yeah, there's this new thing coming out. It's going to be here on such and such date. So I think that their enthusiasm kind of rubs off in a way that would encourage people to be hesitant to invest in something when there's a newer, better, whatever coming out later on. Samsung is still way ahead in first place with 317.3 million shipments last year. So surprise, Apple is not number 1 for handset sales in the world. we could say, you know, within the United States, that's the perception that we have, but obviously the market is much bigger than just here in America. So when you throw Europe and Asia and India and the Middle East into the mix, there's a lot more people there. There's more population. There's just more potential customers. And interestingly enough, one market that Apple has not been able to do very well in so far in particular is India. So that is one area with lots of people not buying a lot of iPhones. I am skeptical about those numbers. The source of numbers is influenced in most cases for obscure reasons, all about shares and market to lush value app. I agree completely, Carl. And again, for anyone, if you didn't know this, I always put the sources for this information down in the video description because one, I'm not making it up, but yes, I encourage people to take these kind of things with a grain of salt because we just never know, you know, which author of which article is in fact a fanboy or owns some stock in one particular company. So not to mention the fact that a lot of these companies aren't completely transparent with their numbers to start with. So I think some of this is coming from estimations. So for what it's worth, that's what they're telling me. Justin Bieber took a shower. What? Okay. All right. So let me see. I'll tell you what. We have 20 minutes left. So let me go grab the delivery that came in and see if there's anything that's remotely interesting to you guys. I don't know that there will be. I don't think I'm expecting any new toys, but let me see what I've got and I'll bring it in here. Well, sorry to disappoint everyone. Most of what's probably the good stuff is actually my girlfriend's because she has more packages coming in than you could imagine. What I did get, though, earlier today, nothing too exciting, just a charger from... So I got this charger, which, why, what, who cares? Well, for this thing, this is a repair screen I'll be repairing, but I did not know, and apparently no one else who took it in knew whether or not it was just the glass that was cracked. This is the HP Envy X2, I believe it is, and it's got a cracked digitizer, and I wasn't sure whether or not the LCD was still good or not, so I had to get a charger to charge this thing up and power it on and see if we got anything on the screen. And let's see if we can get the glare off here. Are we seeing anything? It just buzzed at me. Let's see if it turns on. Yeah, so it does in fact have a logo. It's got Windows 8 and so forth, cracked digitizer, so no big deal. That's just a repair we're doing. And more recently, I just got a package from one of my suppliers here. And this is just an iPad screen that I was waiting for another repair. So sorry guys, nothing exciting to unbox today. Trying to think, I actually do have something coming in that I ordered from China. It is a soldering iron temperature tester. So you're supposed to be able to take the tip of your iron, put it into this machine, and it will tell you if it's generating the right amount of heat, so you can kind of either calibrate or determine whether or not you replace the tip on your iron. That's about it. Nothing else too exciting. I do have Easy Draw set up on my other computer, and I'm thinking that probably next Monday I'll do a demo of that live so you guys can check it out, because I've had people asking about software. I do have one machine that's got ZXW and Easy Draw set up on it, so I want to stream that live and kind of do a comparison, you know, show you like what will this particular software show you versus this one, which one is more useful and how do they work, and there's actually some advantages to both, I think. So other than that, sorry, no exciting unpackaging stuff today. I know I let you down on that one, but the whole delivery was kind of a surprise. Okay, last but not least here, and we got plenty of time to talk, so I'm holding my Mac Mini purchase in case a new model comes out. Did you guys hear, and I don't have a link on this one, but did you hear that with one of the new Macs, they're saying that you have to basically put it in a freezer in order to get it to perform? This is the MacBook Pro, I want to say. MacBook Pro Mini or something like that. You have to cool this thing manually. Otherwise, it will not perform at its full specs as far as processing speed goes, because it turns on, it runs for a minute or two at the correct speed, and as soon as it heats up, it throttles the processor and starts slowing down because it has an overheating problem. And they went on to talk about how this has been one of the things that's gone kind of funny about Apple in general, when it comes to their laptops, is that some people are of the opinion that they're starting to sacrifice performance in favor of design. In order to make things thinner and make them look better and make them more ergonomic, they're not building in enough space for them to properly vent and cool down, and it's affecting their performance. And that's kind of you can imagine probably the different design teams fighting over what should be done. We need more room for this. Well, we need to make it smaller for this, and we need to, put more of this in. So that's kind of an unfortunate thing. It's the i9 that throttles at high workload. Man, I got to tell you, if I bought anything that was, any computer period, but especially if you're spending $1,000 or more on a machine and it doesn't perform to spec, I believe that it's, well justified for people to be upset about that. You shouldn't have to put your computer in a freezer or a refrigerator or something to get it to perform properly. Now, if you live in a particularly warm environment, we know that this has always been an issue for any kind of machines, especially for desktop computers. If you're into gaming and you don't have good ventilation and it's a hot summer day, and you got dust building up on the inside of the thing, you need to open it up, clean it out, add additional fans or some kind of cooling mechanism to get the thing down to where it will perform properly. But if you buy a laptop and you're not setting it down on the carpet or a blanket or anything else that doesn't give it any airspace underneath, you would assume that under normal circumstances, it should run at its design specification. And if it doesn't, obviously there's a problem there. So that is unfortunate. Imagine buying a $4,000 laptop and finding that. Yeah, I'm going to say at that point, it's going back to the manufacturer. I bought a laser heat meter to do that. Unfortunately, very bad accuracy. Yeah, Carl, if you have one of those little handheld infrared things, I've been using those, and they're okay, but you're not really going to get the accuracy that you need, I don't think. I love pizza. Yeah, me too. That's two of us. What about the Note 7? As far as battery is exploding, that was a terrible design. They tried to put too much battery into too small a space and not give it enough room, and we saw it happen. Hopefully your house didn't catch, nobody's house caught on fire, but I think there was at least one situation where that did happen. The $4,000 model is without the 4 terabyte SSD. Yeah, that's unfortunate. It'll be interesting to see how they handle that one. Supposedly they're taking care of the keyboard problem, but a lot of people are not really liking the fact that what they're doing is not really fixing the problem, but rather replacing any of the keyboards that are affected with basically the same type of keyboard, if I understand it correctly. So it's still prone to the same problem over time. That's unfortunate. But what do you do? Wait, so you're telling me that if I spend $7,000 on a laptop and try to export 8K video, it'll take 45 minutes instead of 30 minutes? Darn. Well, no, what he was saying is that he had an 8K video that he was trying to export at 4K, and it was a 5-minute video, and I think he said it took like 35 minutes or something like that, which, on a brand new laptop, and I think we both run into this problem where over time it seems like exporting video through Final Cut Pro, for whatever reason, it starts to take more and more resources or more time to render. I don't understand why that is. I really am just tempted to kind of wipe my entire hard drive now and start all over, fresh install everything. But, coincidence or not, it seems like after I updated to High Sierra last year, that's when all my problems started and everything started running slow. So I don't know. I guess handheld, very bad. Yeah, those things, obviously, and that's what I've got. I've got one of those little infrared, or whatever they call it, the little laser beam you aim, and they work okay, but yeah, I think the accuracy is questionable. So this thing is supposed to give you, within, I don't know if it's plus or minus a couple degrees, it should tell you exactly how much your soldering iron temperature is at. So I'll let you know. We'll unbox that one here for sure. And one more thing that I thought you might be interested in. Do you think, hey, what's up? We got Max Square here. How you doing? Do you think Go Cell Phone Repair will expand to include flying car repairs? That is a good question. I think probably not. And the reason I say that is because that will fall into a category of repair that's already being addressed, and that I would assume would be mechanical repair. So we probably have lots of auto mechanics and plane mechanics who are going to be getting trained on this stuff. And it's interesting that you said that, because you reminded me of something. I have a mechanic that would work on my car specifically, and I recommend this to anyone out there who is having trouble with your car. You can go to a dealer who will give you a mechanic who's been through their training program and basically taught how to get things done as fast as possible, and being offered incentives to blow through your repair as fast as you can, so that way they earn a bonus. Just so you know, when you go to a dealer, you don't necessarily get the most qualified mechanic that there is. But if you find someone who has the same type of car that you do, or several of them, and is also an ASE certified mechanic, and you say, hey, I got a couple questions about this car, and they know it like the back of their hand, hold on to that person's contact information. I did that with my last car, and anything that went wrong with it, forget about the dealer. I brought it straight to this guy, and he could fix anything, and he did it at a very reasonable rate. I don't know why I had to throw that in there, but I think it's a huge value that a lot of people overlook. Most people assume that if I have a Logitech webcam and there's a problem with it, I better send it back to Logitech, right? Well, if I know someone who works on these Logitech webcams and is a regular person like me and you, and I pick their brain and they know what they're talking about, I would much rather deal with them as opposed to a manufacturer whose goal is to earn profit. And what they do is they implement policies that make sure that their employees do what is going to make the most possible money for the company. This is something to keep in mind. Yes, they should know their product, but most of the time when you deal with someone who's repairing something, they're not necessarily going to be the same person who built that device or that car or that plane or whatever it was. So I feel much more comfortable with someone who has lots of experience fixing television screens or televisions or whatever it is, rather than saying, oh, let me go down to whatever big box store. What can you guys do for me to fix this? Because chances are they're going to outsource it, or they're going to send it to another company that contracts for repair. And that's going to be true for a lot of phone manufacturers in the US. If it goes beyond a very simple repair, they're going to send it out to a depot, which, who knows what the quality control is like there. Just saying. I know it sounds like I'm promoting my own stuff, but really, that has been my experience. In any case, here's what you probably want to know: how to get someone to put away their phone and actually listen. Can it be done? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if this is even realistic, but if you did, this is what they suggest. Can we get this screen just a tiny... There we go. Okay, so we've all run into this, and there's going to be a generational divide. I am 100% confident, based on your age. Some people are going to say, what are you talking about? Everyone has their phone all the time. Some people are going to say, I demand you put down your phone while you have a conversation with me, and everything in between, right? And this is the world that we live in. But here's what we do know, and I thought this was very interesting. Decades ago, and there is a survey cited here, so if you want to look it up, check it out for yourself, but I think we all kind of know this. Research settled the question of whether you and I can do two things at once. We can't, at least not effectively. And this is one of the things that when I hear people say that they're multitasking, that, with rare exception, what that means is that you're doing two things at once, but you're not doing either one of them particularly well, or as good as you possibly could, obviously, right? Because if you're concentrating on one thing and that's it, you would hope to perform better than someone who's doing the same thing you are, but something else simultaneously, because we only have so many resources. Our brains operate on a binary system. 1 and 1, 1 and 0. You can't put three things together. You literally cannot add three numbers at once unless you take a shortcut of combining two of them together and recognizing that as a single digit. It's a strange thing, but it's true. So if you get concerned, if you become concerned that someone is paying attention to their phone and saying, I'm listening to you at the same time, you are definitely not getting the same amount of attention, and they're not absorbing the same amount of information as they would be if they weren't reading a message or checking an alert or something like that. So what are you going to do about it? What can you do, really? Well, in many situations, you're very limited. I've been in some before where I just kind of sat back and said, I'll wait till you're done. And then the other person assured me that, no, it's okay. You can go ahead and keep talking. I can do this at the same time. I said, you know what? That's okay. I'm still going to wait until you're finished with your phone before we have this conversation. And even though they weren't happy about it, they were able to say, okay, fine, I'm putting down the phone, let's talk. And, the big problem here seems to be that a lot of people don't even realize this is an issue. If no one says anything to you about it, why would you do any different, right? So in one online survey, and there are many, I'm sure, and remember, surveys are limited to people who have the time and motivation to take them, which, represents a certain segment of the population. My colleagues and I found that nearly 9 out of 10 people say at least once a week their friends or family stop paying attention to them in favor of something happening on their digital devices. Not hard to imagine, right? Only 1 in 10 people, according to this survey, speak up to the offender. So again, if it's happening and it bothers you, but you don't say anything about it, then why would you really expect anything to change, right? And nowadays, people are certainly speaking up about things that bother them. So, if any time's a good time, I suppose this is it, to say, hey, I would really appreciate it if I can have your undivided attention for this conversation. And even though some people won't necessarily be happy about it, if they start hearing that a lot, this is what the article suggests, is that we will not bring that courtesy back into vogue, so to speak, unless a lot of people say something about it. So if you feel like you'd rather have someone set down their phone, their tablet, whatever it is that they're working on while they're talking to you, you got to let them know. And I'm sure that you can, it's easy enough to say it in a nice way or to even make light of it. If you make it into a joke and you can be funny about it, it's much easier for people to accept, what I would call a constructive criticism. Hey, I'd really feel great if you were paying attention to me while we were talking and could do without the phone for, the 5 or 10 minutes it takes for this conversation. Who knows? It might catch on. I could be crazy. It's possible. Harvey says, meet them somewhere where there's no cell reception. That is brilliant. But we're running out of those spaces, right? Where are we going to find them? Just text them with the death threat. There you go. And that's a clever one. I've thought about doing this before. When somebody's paying more attention to their phone while we're having a conversation, just start bombarding them with text messages at the same time. That would be funny, right? Would they get the hint or would they just text you back? I don't know. Funny, when I updated Final Cut Pro, it actually doubled my export speeds. Better for me now. Okay, fine. If I update this thing, here's the thing. If I update my OS on my Mac and I update to the new Final Cut Pro and I don't like it, how do I go back to the old version? That's the only reservation I have. It's working good enough now, but if it gets any worse, I'm going to be disgusted and feel like buying another MacBook. And I don't want to be that person that says, oh, now it's time for me to drop another huge amount of money for something that should be working okay right now. I pulled out my MacBook Air and it actually renders just as fast as my MacBook Pro does. And it's got like less RAM, less everything. So I can't figure it out. Maybe there's some rogue program on my Mac that's causing a problem. Check couples in restaurants now. I went into a club and the kids were on the dance floor taking selfies, texting while dancing. Wow. Yeah, it's crazy too is that someone mentioned that one of the things that's very odd about living in this day and age is that people spend less and less time enjoying life because it has become such a big thing to document with photographs and videos and social media posts that someone will go to a concert and be more concerned with taking pictures of something that's happening live right in front of them, that they'll never be able to experience that same performance again, but they're not actually watching it. Like they're missing out on the entire experience, and instead recording parts of it or whatever, if they allow you to take your phone in there, but you're not really there anymore. You're not going through that whole experience A to Z from start to finish because you're being constantly interrupted by pulling out your camera and taking a selfie and taking a picture of something else or checking an alert or sending a message. I don't know. It's weird. I'm not going to condemn anyone. I'm just saying that's the way it is now. And in a way, it's sad. If you're missing out on the great experience of life and instead documenting the great experience of life, which I guess, maybe in your old age, you go and look at these photos and say, oh, that was, I had good times back then. But, how much of it do you remember, I guess is the question. People forget about Edward Snowden. The NSA has access to our phones. Oh, I would imagine they have got access to everything by now. Beyond phones and satellite cameras and webcams that turn themselves on, and what was the other thing? Cell sites that can be spoofed. And in fact, I just heard about a new one that I actually meant to include this tonight. There is a new deal where they can hijack. Oh, gosh darn it, guys. I completely forgot this and we're out of time. I'm going to bring this up on Monday. There is a new hacker method where they have figured out how to basically get into self-driven cars and manipulate them in order to basically drive them wherever they want to. And they said this whole thing was ridiculously easy. Like, it was a couple $100s worth of hardware, having the right software, and you could basically spoof the GPS system in the self-driving car to think that it was getting a signal from a satellite, when in fact it's getting a signal from some remote hacker who has now taken over your vehicle and decides where it's going to drive, on which side of the road, when to turn, and so forth. So think about that one. I'm going to talk about that next week. That's pretty freaky. Other than that, I can downgrade macOS easily. Okay, cool. If that's the case, then I feel much better. I'm happy to give it a new try on the new version, see if that works. If it does, great. I can make more videos much faster, and that'll be my plan. Got a whole bunch of I've got a whole bunch of repair videos that I will be editing. Just published one last week for just a basic charge port repair on an LG, but I've got some more stuff coming up. In the works right now is iPhone 7 Plus TriStar, another iPhone 6 touch disease repair, and what else did I do? I did something else recently. Anyways, I'm going to be getting those published hopefully over the course of the next couple of weeks or so. I will be back Monday. I've got to go, guys. I forgot. Mac Square and I are going to have a little conference call right now and talk about our plans for YouTube domination. So I'm going to cut out of here. You guys have a great rest of your week and weekend, and I'll see you on Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific Standard. And if not, I will be back here next Thursday, 6 p.m., same time, same place. Have a great one.